Welcome everybody to Crystal, Kyle, and Friends. So today, first of all, we're recording in the Sahara Desert. Okay, it is hot in here.
It is really warm.
You know me, I like 27 degrees in the studio when the show's going on.
Yeah.
But anyway, my pits are going, my forehead's going to be going shortly, but that's all right. We're here. We're here. And it's going to be a great show. So today we're going to be talking to Demi Reeder, who's an editor at The Lead and founder of 972 magazine. And 972 just had a fascinating article basically verifying that, like, yes, the strategy of the IDF is to kill civilians to hope that the civilians flip on Hamas.
Yes.
And so we're going to be talking about that and the domestic policies of Israel. Of course, there was a poll recently that showed that only like 2% of the population, 1 or 2%.
It was 1.8% to be precise.
Want the IDF to like reel it in a little bit.
Yeah. And
amazing.
60% said they hadn't gone far enough.
So the domestic politics of Israel, we're going to dive into that. Everybody definitely sign up on Substack. You're going to want to see this entire interview. But before we get to that,
yes,
we had a wee bit of a debate the other day.
We did, indeed. The last GOP debate.
And it was also News Nation, by the way.
News Nation, moderator was Megyn Kelly and then two other women whose names I'm forgetting.
So just sorry to interject, but like, Megyn Kelly doesn't even work for News Nation.
Yeah.
They just brought her in.
Well, actually, one of their journalists did, and then the other two, Megyn Kelly and the other lady, didn't.
Yeah, and I think we all made history being like the first people to ever turn on News Nation. The best views they ever got was when you went in there and embarrassed Leland Vitter to his face and humiliated him, and then that got like a gazillion views on YouTube.
My channel, though, not there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's true. Because their headline was dumb on it. They were not going to put like Leland Vitter gets destroyed by Crystal Ball. But like nobody watches News Nation, and this was it was a yawn fest in a sense because the country didn't even know that the debate was happening.
Yeah, but I think it ended up being the most entertaining.
I agree.
Like, I don't think it accomplished anything. I don't think it changed anything, but I do think it ended up being the most entertaining. So let me set up some of the dynamics here. 4 candidates remaining on the stage. You had Chris Christie, Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, and Vivek Ramaswamy. So it also helps when you winnow the field down a little bit and, you know, you get the Asa Hutchinsons, the Doug Burgums, no offense, Doug, off the stage. So you can just get the main crew going at each other, right? And as I said, Megyn Kelly was the moderator. I also think she was probably the best moderator of the ones that we've seen. She came out of the gates with some tough questions for everybody, but clearly Nikki Haley's rise in the polls, and even more critically, the fact that she has garnered much of the large donor support that Ron DeSantis was previously benefiting from and that he was hoping he would continue to benefit from, has gotten under their skin because they were all, especially Vivek and Ron DeSantis, really coming for Nikki Haley last night. Let's take a listen to a little bit of that.
Her donors, these Wall Street liberal donors, they make money in China. They are not going to let her be tough on China, and she will cave to the donors. She will not stand up for you. She said one of the first things I'm going to do.
I said we were going to get the millions of bots.
She wants government ID to dox every
American.
That's what she said. You can roll the tape. She said, I want your name. And that was going to be one of the first things she did in office. And then she got real serious blowback, and understandably so, because it'd be a massive expansion of government. It wasn't about the Parents' Rights and Education bill. It was about prohibiting sex change operations on minors. They do puberty blockers. These are irreversible. Talk to Chloe Cole. She went through this. Now she's an adult. She's warning against it. She may never be able to have kids again. That is what Nikki Haley opposed. She said the law shouldn't get involved in that. And I just ask you, if you're somebody that's going to be the president of the United States and you can't stand up against child abuse, how are you going to be able to stand up for anything? That is the truth.
We're talking about that trans issue. And Nikki Haley's campaign launch video sounded like a woke Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light ad talking about how she would kick in heels. At the first debate, she said that only a woman can get this job done. That's what she said. After the third debate, when I criticized Ronna McDaniel after 5 failed years of leadership of this party and criticized Nikki for her corrupt foreign dealings as a military contractor, she said that I have a woman problem. Nikki, I don't have a woman problem. You have a corruption problem. And I think that that's what people need to know. Nikki is corrupt. This is a woman who will send your kids to die so she can buy a bigger house. This is the problem. Using identity politics more effectively than Kamala Harris is a form of intellectual fraud. And it actually needs to end. There's our donor puppet masters wielding their puppet right up here tonight. This is how this game is played. The puppet masters put up their puppet, and I reject the use of identity politics in this party.
And in terms of these donors that are supporting me, they're just jealous. They wish that they were supporting them, but I'm not going to sit there and
So she's right on that last point. I mean, Knives Out for Nikki was one of the sort of big themes of the night. What were your overall thoughts, Kyle?
I mean, I think she kind of got hammered into the ground, and she tried to do this whole, like, I'm above the fray type thing. There was one moment where they were like, Nikki, what's your response to what Vivek just said? And she's like, I'm not going to respond.
Right.
And I just don't think she did an effective job because they were really gunning for her hard. And look, the argument of like, you're taking Koch brothers money, like the billionaires came in. Yeah, it's true that the others want that money and they didn't get it. But the audience doesn't know that. And holding up the sign, Nikki is corrupt. And when she tried to deflect allegations of like making money off defense contractors and all that stuff, she just sort of admitted, like, in fact, I quoted it yesterday on Twitter, like, we'll take money from whoever we can get money from. And I just don't, like, it's sort of old school politics. And I feel like DeSantis and Vivek sort of harnessed the anti-establishment feelings on the right a hell of a lot better than Nikki did. And also, by the way, I looked at the polls. She's still a little bit down to DeSantis overall. Yeah. She had a big surge, but she's still down a little bit to DeSantis overall. And I think, and I'm curious what you think of this, that everybody had a decent night, kind of except Nikki. I think she was the only one who had a poor night.
I feel like you always feel like Ron DeSantis did better than I feel like Ron DeSantis did.
I only had one moment where I thought he handled it poorly.
I mean, there was nothing that I could point to that I'd be like, that was a disaster. But I also felt like from the jump, he was very uncomfortable.
DeSantis?
Yes. I felt like he knows that this is the last debate. His campaign is effectively facing an existential threat from the fact that the donor class is going to Nikki. Because remember, he decided to run his campaign in this different way where rather than taking in funds directly to his campaign, he was going to use these super PACs. We're going to run his ground operation and his TV ad operation, all of that. And that was dependent on having millions and millions of dollars flowing into those super PACs from the billionaire class, which is now basically all thrown in with Nikki Haley. So even though she's behind him in the polls a little bit still, although not in New Hampshire where she's beating him at this point, he feels this as an existential threat. He knew coming in he needed to go after her aggressively. And what we've seen in the first debates is he was more comfortable sitting back and letting everybody else go to war with each other than he is actually affirmatively going on the offense. So I thought he felt uncomfortable and off his game. I thought Nikki felt uncomfortable and off her game. Vivek is Vivek. He's very skilled rhetorically, but people just don't like him. So it's weird because I'm like, I guess he had a good night, but do I think that that's going to make more people like him? No, not really. I don't think it really changes anything. Chris Christie by far had his best debate performance that he's had, you know, in any of these. He actually showed up to this debate. He had some good moments. I thought he had a moment at the beginning where he sort of like called out the absurdity of them all debating as if one of them is going to be the nominee when Trump is beating all of them by massive amounts in every single poll. I thought that was a good moment of truth telling. But again, sort of like Vivek, where, you know, they don't like him like for his personality. Like they don't like Chris Christie because he's anti-Trump. So even though he had a good night, it's not like it really amounts to anything.
So on DeSantis, we definitely have a disagreement because he didn't come across as desperate to me. I agree that he was more aggressive than he was in previous debates, but he's got such like a boring personality that even when he gets aggressive, it doesn't feel like it's over the line.
I just felt like he felt nervous.
I mean, he's Ron DeSantis. He's got like the weirdest faces in the world. He sits there. He doesn't know how to just exist. His smiles are super weird. Everything's so forced.
Everything about his body. And
everything, yeah, Wooden Man. And there was that moment where people were on Twitter saying it looks like he's powering down in between answers because he was sitting there like this, standing there like that. Yeah, so I don't know. It didn't come across as desperate to me. There's only one moment where I thought DeSantis really did poorly. I think it was in some back and forth with Chris Christie, and Chris Christie was like, you won't answer a direct question. Yeah. Answer the question. And then instead of answering the direct question, he kept trying to like BS his way around it. That was DeSantis' worst moment in my opinion. But to underline something you said, yeah, that Chris Christie moment was really interesting where he jumped in at one point. I think it was the first question they asked him and he's like, what are we doing up here? We're putting on some weird kabuki theater type play where we're pretending like this matters. These guys are all treating Trump like Voldemort, he who shall not be named, when he's beating all of you. So yeah, you say, oh, my poll numbers aren't doing that well. Well, it's because I'm telling the truth, and sometimes people don't want to hear the truth. And the fact of the matter is this guy's crushing all of us, and that's a disaster for the Republican Party. So overall, yeah, I think Christie, definitely, I agree with you, he had his most powerful night. I think Vivek, is, like you said, is Vivek. He's you either like him or you hate him, and more people hate him, right? And even though he had a good night, he does come across, like Chris Christie said at one point, as the world's most arrogant blowhard. And I think Nikki did the worst, and I think DeSantis did okay and held his own. But again, the point you always make, I think, is the most important here. None of this matters. None of this matters. Like, this doesn't...
Always important to keep that in perspective.
Oh, the polls moved 3 percentage points for Senator McFuckface. Who cares? Who cares? It doesn't mean anything. Like, what are we even doing here?
Yes, correct. You referenced the point, Chris Christie getting into it with Vivek and calling him like the most arrogant blowhard on the planet or whatever he said. This was over an exchange on Ukraine, where initially Vivek is going after Nikki and saying, you want to send people over to die in this country. You can't even name 3 regions of it, 3 oblasts in it. And she has this sort of blank-faced reaction. Chris Christie comes in over the top. It's a relatively lengthy exchange, but let's take a listen to a bit of it.
It takes an outsider to see this through. Look at the blank expression. She doesn't know the names of the provinces that she wants to actually fight for. And there's her puppet masters right there. The donors. The donors right there that are playing her like the puppet masters.
Hold on. Let me just say something here. You know, his reasonable peace deal in Ukraine, he made it clear. Give them all the land they've already stolen. Promise Putin you'll never put Ukraine in Russia, and then trust Putin not to have a relationship with China. Let me tell you something. That's no
That's
reasonable.
not my deal. That's not my deal,
yes,
Chris.
It's exactly what you said. You do this at every debate.
I'll tell you exactly what it is.
Don't interrupt me. I didn't interrupt you. Okay? You say this. You do this. You do this at every debate. You go out on the stump and you say something. All of us see it on video. We confront you on the debate stage. You say you didn't say it, and then you back away. And I want to say
tell you exactly what I said, Chris.
I'm not done yet.
Well, this is
now look.
This is nonsense. This man is spewing. This man is spewing nonsense.
Let me tell you something. This is the 4th debate. The 4th debate that you would be voted in the first 20 minutes as the most obnoxious blowhard in America. So shut up for a little while.
I'm gonna respond to that. I want to say your version. After the main bill, I'll take that.
I want to say something else. We're now 25 minutes into this debate, and he has insulted Nikki Haley's basic intelligence. Not her positions, her basic intelligence.
So there you go. What'd you make of that exchange? I mean, that was kind of the Chris Christie that I thought we would get in all of these debates, and he finally showed up for this one.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I have mixed feelings on it because on the substance of this one, I definitely agree more with Vivek.
Same.
But in terms of how it played out, I don't know. I'm actually kind of split. Chris Christie definitely has the more dominating personality, and he certainly landed that line about Vivek being the most obnoxious blowhard in America. Yeah. But just to go through it. So the line, she can't name 3 provinces in eastern Ukraine that she wants to go send our troops to fight and die for. That's true. Like, that's absolutely accurate.
Yeah, and you can see on her face, she's like, fuck.
Because if she knew, she would have just chimed in and said provinces.
Yeah.
But she didn't do it.
Yeah.
Right? So, and by the way, this is neocon 101. Like, back during the Iraq War, like, do you think that George W. Bush had a good understanding of Iraq and where the Shia are and where the Sunni are and where the Kurds are and who we're aligned with? And, like, they don't know. This is what the neocons do. It's like, bomb now, ask questions later.
Yep.
So totally right on that. What it did annoy me with what Vivek said is at one point, he keeps doing this Trump line. And like, we all saw the Trump line in 2016. Oh, all the people making the noise for Nikki, they're her donors right there. It's like, we got it. We got it. You're a Trump sycophant. Come up with your own original stuff. It's enough. This is like the 3rd time he's done it. It's so obnoxious.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's probably true. It seemed like Nikki did pack the audience. But like, Vivek's whole shtick of like being the most sycophantic to Trump is just, it's so soulless. You know what I mean? Like, you're clearly posturing for something, a position in the administration or something, you know, a show afterwards, something, right? Then Chris Christie, like, he comes into White Knight for Nikki Haley, and he basically says, like, any deal with Russia and Ukraine is unacceptable. And it's like, okay, well, come live in the fucking real world, right? Like, of course, we would all like to be able to say, Ukraine, you keep 100% of your land. Russia, you get out and accept defeat with a smile. But we live in the real world. And, like, you're going to have to do, it's like with Israel and Palestine. If we get a deal, there's going to be a million parts of the deal that people on both sides are not happy with.
Right.
But that's the real world. And so he acts like it's absurd to have the position that, you know, there's got to be some sort of negotiated settlement and maybe Russia gets to keep Crimea in this situation, which they've held since fucking 2014 or something. He just acts like any deal is absurd. It's not the terms of the deal. It's like any deal at all, he would say. That's too much to Russia, right? So that annoyed me. And then the final point is when he says, you insulted her basic intelligence, Christie says that to Vivek. No, I don't agree. That was absolutely substantive. That was absolutely like, okay, if you want to go send people to fight and die here, name where they're going. And she can't do it. So I don't think that that's like insulting. I do think Vivek and Nikki hate each other and they would insult each other's intelligence, but that actually was policy related.
That's true. And it's not only policy related, it's kind of devastating because she also loves to use her experience at the UN and as governor of South Carolina to claim that she has all this experience and she specifically has all of this foreign policy experience. And so for him as an outsider to be able to land this blow of like, she doesn't even know the basics of what she's talking about. So when we're talking about experience, like experience at what?
Yeah, Hillary Clinton had experience.
Exactly.
And what did that give us?
Exactly. And many people in Washington have experience, and it's experience doing horrific things that we don't want them to do anymore. So I thought it was effective from that perspective as well. In terms of who won the exchange, I think it actually served both Vivek and Chris Christie well. You know, if you are someone who views the Ukraine war as Vivek does, and, you know, I certainly am closer to his views than I am to the neocons, Nikki Haley or Chris Christie or Ron DeSantis, frankly, on a lot of these things, then you probably thought, you know, Vivek did well on that. I mean, Chris Christie's constituency is very limited, but I thought he showed a lot of forcefulness there and certainly landed the most accurate blow of what people don't like about Vivek in the exchange. So overall, I thought it was a wash and good for both of them and very diminishing for Nikki in general, because not only do you have the specter of her clearly not knowing the three regions and like with a look on her face like, fuck, what do I do here? But then it's also like
she needed Christie to come help.
For Christie to come in over the top and like have to rescue you like some little damsel in distress. That's, not a great feeling.
I don't know if we have this video, but there was a line that was even more devastating, I think, from Vivek against Nikki. Do we have the video or no? Where the lipstick on the pig?
No, we don't have that
Okay, so then I'll tell everybody what it is. At one point, Vivek says to Nikki, you could put lipstick on a pig, it's still... no. You could put lipstick on Dick Cheney.
Yeah.
It's still a neocon fascist. That's what he said. And I was like, hot damn, son. I mean, it's true, right? She does have Dick Cheney's politics.
In real time to that
I was like, yo, that's crazy. That's a strong line. But I will also say, and this is the thing that's so annoying about Vivek, is that even when he's right, he's wrong. Is that you're sucking up to Trump, who's also a neocon.
Right.
He hired John Bolton. He hired Gina Haspel. He increased the drone war over 400%. He still kept us in Iraq. He still kept us in Afghanistan. He's tried to coup Venezuela. Like, I can go down the list, guys. He killed a top Iranian commander who was in the field fighting ISIS, de facto acting as the Air Force for ISIS. And you love Trump, but you hate these other people on the stage. Again, it's just like, Vivek doesn't actually have any positions. He just has, like, postures to virtue signal to the audience he's currently trying to virtue signal to.
Well, you made the point about how he's decided the lane is to be like the biggest Trump sycophant.
Correct.
That was on display last night. And you know that it's an adopted position because in his book, he talked about how horrified he was by January 6th, and the language about that was very different. And then last night he trots out like January 6th is an inside job and this whole string of like conspiracy
Do we have that
theories.
clip or no?
We don't have that one, no.
Well, okay. By the way, the more I thought about it, the more I was like, wait a second. Vivek is right, just not in the way he thinks. Yeah, 9/11 was an inside job. January 6th was an inside job. January 6th was an inside job because Trump was the one orchestrating the attempt to overthrow the government. So it was. He was the president. I know that's not what he means, but he's technically right, just in the exact opposite way that he. I don't know. Joe Biden orchestrated? Antifa orchestrated? What's he saying?
Yeah, I think their theory, like the Ray Epps, the FBI orchestrated it.
Oh, they're saying deep state trying to make Trump look bad or something.
But
or
I can guarantee you, in the future, if he does like a liberal turn, is trying to get a CNN commentator job, he will use that exact rationalization that you said. Like, no,
I meant Trump did it. Yeah,
Trump was the inside job. That's what he was doing there. So we have this other moment from Chris Christie that was interesting where he really, this was the part that you thought Ron DeSantis didn't do well in, that this was his worst
interesting. We have that
moment of
one.
the night, where Christie kind of called him on this a few times of like, this dude never actually answers the question. And he really got him at this moment when the moderators had asked Ron DeSantis, is Trump fit for office? And DeSantis tries to spin and say something vague about generational change. And Christie really nails him on it. Take a listen.
Ron, why doesn't he just answer the question? The question was very direct. Is he fit to be president or isn't he? The rest of the speech is interesting, but completely non-responsive. And if we were in a courtroom, they'd strike the answer and say, Governor DeSantis,
No, they
you're
wouldn't. They would say that
you're a smart
they would
man.
argue that
No, they would.
No, they wouldn't,
They would
Chris.
strike the answer
No, they wouldn't.
because you're not answering
You
it.
just
Is he
don't
fit?
like- you
Is he
have your-
fit?
you have
no.
your
Is he
thing. You
fit or
have your
isn't he?
thing.
No, I don't have my thing.
We don't-
He's the thing. Is
We
he
do
fit
not
or
want
isn't
to
he?
do someone
You're
that's
talking about him
almost
being 80 years
It
old.
doesn't mean
Ron,
that somebody
is he
couldn't
fit?
get elected. That's
Ron,
up to the people that
Governor
decide.
DeSantis,
But
let
I
him
think we have an
finish.
opportunity
Or
to
isn't
do
he?
somebody who's
Governor
in.
DeSantis,
Too
let
far.
him finish.
Ron,
Okay.
is he
I think we
fit?
have an opportunity
Guys,
to do
guys,
somebody
guys,
who
no
is in the
talking
prime
over
of their
each other.
life.
Yes.
We don't have to
No
worry
talking
about
over.
all
I'm
this stuff
good.
with
Ron-
confidence.
Stop.
We can
Governor
get it done,
DeSantis,
and we'll do it.
I'm going to come to you. Finish.
Look, Father Time is undefeated. I don't know how he would score on a test, but I know this. We have an opportunity to nominate someone and elect someone for 2 terms who's going to be spitting nails on day 1 and for 8 years
So
deliver
you do think he's
big
fit?
result.
You
We
do
should
think.
not nominate somebody
He won't answer.
who's almost 80 years old.
Okay.
He's afraid to answer.
No, I'm not.
He got him good there. And he went back to this refrain a few times. And it reminded me a little bit, it wasn't as powerful, but a little bit of the moment he had famously with Marco Rubio, where he's like,
Right, yeah.
calls
Look,
him out
he broke down. He keeps saying the same thing.
calls him out for using these talking points, and Marco Rubio just goes back and uses the same talking points. And you had that dynamic with Ron DeSantis where he was able to call him out multiple times for like, you just won't answer the freaking question. And also this underlying very clear and very unbecoming dynamic of you're terrified of Donald Trump. You're terrified to say what you actually think about this man.
And so the other moment where he wouldn't answer the question and Christie called him on it was when they were asking if they would send U.S. troops to Gaza. And DeSantis totally dodged it. But by the way, it's interesting because, I don't know, maybe it's something about DeSantis' boring personality, but when he dodges a question, I actually sense it less than I do with the other ones. Something about the lack of charisma makes me think, oh, it's like he's sort of directly answering it, even though in retrospect, you're like, he didn't answer that at all.
Yeah.
So Christie caught him and called him out on that exact same way he did here. But here's my question for you, because this is what I'm a little split on this.
Okay.
So DeSantis he's refusing to take the bait to directly attack Trump, but he's doing like a more roundabout way of attacking Trump of just like, hey, man, I'm not saying anything other than that homeboy's kind of old and maybe we should go with the younger generation, right? And so my question to you is, do the hardcore Trump people hear that and think, well, I don't care that you're not attacking him directly, you're still attacking him, so fuck you? Or do they sort of accept the nuance that, oh, DeSantis is less bad than Christie because Christie hates our boy more and goes after our boy more, whereas DeSantis is being a little more artful with it?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely hate him less than Christie. But what they really want to hear is what Vivek would say, which is like, of course he's fit. He's amazing. It was a great president, you know?
So then, look, this gets back to the core problem for DeSantis and for everybody else.
Yeah.
There's not even a tightrope for you to walk. There's no rope. There's nothing there.
There is nothing there. There is nothing there. And, you know, DeSantis has tried a few different things. He tried, like, look at the scoreboard, basically like, I'm a winner, he's a loser. Well, at this point, you look at the polling, Trump looks pretty strong for re-election. So the electability argument, not really going to land. And I don't even see him really making that argument anymore.
No, he still does. He still does. In interviews, I've heard him say if Trump gets the nomination, Biden's going to get another 4 years.
But I don't think, like, I don't even believe that at this point.
Me too, yeah. Agreed.
I mean, anybody, and I don't know that was ever that salient a concern for the Republican electorate, but now they're looking at the polls. They're like, a toaster oven could beat Joe Biden right now. Like, we can nominate whoever we
That
want.
is what
and
they
we
think,
want
yeah.
Trump.
Yep.
So that argument does not work whatsoever. And so he, and I think Nikki too, try some version of like, well, he made good promises and he had good ideas, but he wasn't really able to deliver. I'll be able to deliver. But the problem with that is the Republican base also doesn't believe that. Like, they feel like, and they were told by people like Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley and Chris Christie, by the way, at the time, that actually his years were incredible success, that he was incredibly effective. He was able to accomplish, you know, promises made, promises kept, et cetera, et cetera. So if you've been feeding that to the Republican base for all these years, you can't then turn around on the dime and be like, no, actually, he was very ineffective and I'll be effective. It's like, well, we don't actually think that. We think, based on not only our belief, but on what you people have been telling us, that he was fantastic. So we're not really buying this either.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's even simpler than that. I think it's just vibes. I think it's just, we like the guy. He pisses off the right people. And we just have a soft spot for him.
We got to defend him.
We just have a soft spot for him. So I think it's like super base level, instinctual, gut. Like, it's a total vibes election, in my opinion.
Let me ask you this question about DeSantis, because I described earlier, the moment his campaign is in, even as he holds on by his like fingertips to the second place positioning, he really is facing kind of an existential moment with regard to his campaign, because of there's all these reports about his super PACs and chaos, and this one's out and that one's out, and this one's warring with that one, and this one hates the other one, and they're blaming them for a bad ad strategy and whatever. Clearly things are not going well over there. The Kochs endorse Nikki. Paul Ryan endorsed Nikki. There's a donor stampede into Nikki's corner. Do you think that he actually makes it to the Iowa caucuses?
I mean, I have no idea. It's up to him and his team if he wants to keep going. I will say this, though. If I was him, yeah, I would hang in there until there's absolutely no hope and no path. Because you are dealing with a guy with 91 criminal charges against him who's the front runner by a mile and a half. So there is a scenario where he's just taken off the field because he's behind bars. And so in that scenario, then you have Nikki Haley versus Ron DeSantis. And on that one, and I know you might disagree with me on this one, on that one, I definitely think DeSantis wins over Nikki Haley.
I think probably. Yeah, I think probably DeSantis would win in that. But on the other hand, he is very dependent on this donor network, which is now clearly coalesced behind Nikki. And Republicans don't have a kingmaker in Obama the way that Democrats did, who, you know, caused all the chips to fall when they needed to fall, Pete Buttigieg, et cetera, in order to anoint Joe Biden. But there could definitely be a coalescing of donors and a coordinated behind-the-scenes pressure campaign to get him to drop. Because they're not fools. They know that you need one Trump alternative. You need everybody to coalesce around one Trump alternative. They've decided that Trump alternative is Nikki Haley. Ron DeSantis's political and private life future, like whatever he goes out and does in the private sector, is dependent on this particular class of people. So it's not like they don't hold sway with him.
But at this point, it's not even a question. If Trump is still in the race, he's going to win. It's over. So it's not even a question of that. It's a question of what does a potential Trump in prison world look like? And in that scenario, I think DeSantis is smart enough to see that and think, like, if I just hang in there until then. Because, look, the Republican base is a little different. Like, those attacks over Nikki Haley taking big donor money and being corrupt, that works. So it doesn't matter that she has all these big money donors behind her. If the base looks at you and is like, fuck you, I don't trust you, then they're not going to vote for her. They're going to vote for one of the other people, whether it be Vivek or DeSantis. I think more likely DeSantis. And so it's a different scenario from the Democratic Party, where when the big money interests coalesce behind somebody and the kingmakers step in and declare that this is the person, the Democratic base, like lemmings, are like, okay.
Okay.
Whereas on the Republican side, they're like, whoever you're trying to shove down my throat, no, that's not happening.
Yeah.
So I do think it's a little bit of a different scenario. I think that the only reason everybody else stays in this race is if Trump goes to prison, I'm waiting in the wings. Because outside of that, it's mission impossible. It's totally hopeless as we're at.
It doesn't seem to me, though, like the donors really believe it's mission impossible. It seems to me like
but they're idiots.
Think it's a chance. Yeah,
but they were wrong in 2016.
I know. But what I'm saying is, if they're the ones that are applying the pressure and sort of the puppet masters behind the scenes, as Vivek Ramaswamy said, they're the ones applying the pressure and creating the landscape. They're not thinking of it in terms of, well, if Trump goes to prison, maybe there's a shot. They're thinking of it in terms of, maybe we've got a shot if there's only one Trump alternative and, everybody else drops out and we just all go all in for Nikki Haley. So that's why I feel like there could be pressure being applied to Ron DeSantis.
There could be, but if he was smart, he would just ignore it, I think. and then you just wait and see, and hope Trump goes to prison.
Yeah.
That's his best bet.
That is his best
Yeah.
bet. All right, we have one more moment of why Nikki Haley is the, I don't know if she's the absolute worst, but she's one of the absolute worsts on the Republican side. She is arguing that she wants to change the definition so that every government, every school has to acknowledge that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Real authoritarian turn here. Let's take a listen.
If this had been the KKK that was doing protests on those campuses, every one of those college presidents would have been up in arms. This is just as bad. The idea that they would go and allow that kind of pro-Hamas protest or agree with the genocide of Jews and try and say that they needed context on that, there is no context to that. This is what we need to do to deal with it. First of all, we have got to get foreign money out of our universities. You've got Arab money, you've got Chinese money, you've got others. We need to go to every university and say, you either take foreign money or you take American money, but the days of taking both are over. The second thing we need to do is Biden made a mistake not including anti-Zionism in the definition of anti-Semitism. If you don't think that Israel has a right to exist, that is anti-Semitic. We will change the definition so that every government, every school has to acknowledge the definition for what it is.
She then goes on to claim that, quote, for every 30 minutes someone watches TikTok, every day they become 17% more anti-Semitic.
More pro-Hamas, too, she goes on to say. So if you watch TikTok for 30 minutes, at the end of it, you're going to be like, God,
17.
Allahu Akbar!
Only 17%,
I love Hamas!
though. Only
17%. But if you watch for an hour, look out, that number's going to tick up and up and up, and you're going to end and be like, you know, Goebbels had a point. When you're done watching. Like, okay, look, this is, first of all, that's the most boomer shit I've ever heard in my life. That TikTok thing. Like, you hopped on a short bus to Boomerville. Like, that is fucking psycho. Second of all, this is the exact shit that people on the right used to go after people on the left for all the time. This, oh my God, you guys see racism and sexism and misogyny and transphobia around every corner, and you want to have a pampered little safe room where you don't hear any opinions that you disagree with, and you want to shut down everybody and censor anybody who has an opinion. That's different than yours. You're too quick to call people bigoted and xenophobic, and now they're like, this is my calling card. I'm going to do the exact same tactics, only when it comes to anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. Now, by the way, we have to address that. That's the main point. That's the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
You have Hasidic, ultra-Orthodox, anti-Zionist Jews. Are they anti-Semitic? Are the most Jewish people on earth anti-Semitic? Because according to their definition, they say it. And by the way, you could have Christian Zionists.
Yes.
And some of those Christian Zionists explicitly believe that the rapture is going to happen and most of the Jews are going to burn in hell for eternity, and only a small percentage of them are going to be converted to Christianity. So what about the Christian Zionists? What about John Hagee, who said Hitler was sent from God? He's a Zionist. Is he not anti-Semitic because he's a Zionist? This is so stupid. This is like saying if you criticize Saudi Arabia, you're Islamophobic.
Right.
What are you talking about? It's a government. And they commit human rights abuses. That's why we're criticizing them.
Yep.
And it's the same thing if you're anti-Zionist. Zionism is just belief in an official Jewish state. That's all it is.
Yes.
So even if you say, hey, there should be a state for Jews, but it's not a Jewish state, because a Jewish state denotes either an ethno-state or a theocracy, or both of those things.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm against ethno-states and theocracies. I believe in secular democracy. That used to be called common sense.
Yeah.
That used to be called the most American position you can imagine. But now they cuck themselves. Oh my God. Okay. So I did want to bring up also the line about, look at all this Arab money and this Chinese money into the universities. Let's change that quote and see how people like Nikki Haley would react. Look at all this Jewish money coming into the universities. Sounds a little bigoted now, doesn't it? But when you flip it on Arabs or Palestinians or Muslims or Chinese people, all of a sudden she's like, I don't see a problem at all. And these guys are cheering on. I don't know if you've been seeing this. Now there's all these press conferences with these like pampered little prick Harvard students who are saying, I didn't feel safe because somebody said from the river to the sea in a protest. And it's like, I can't stand you idiots, because obviously some pink-haired college kid saying from the river to the sea, they don't mean genocide the Jews. That's not what they mean. That's not what they mean. They mean they want a one-state democratic rights for all in the region. Call it Israel if you want. Call it Palestine if you want. Make it binational. Call it Israel-Palestine. They're saying end the occupation, end the apartheid. That's it. That's it. Yes, when a Hamas person says from the river to the sea, they may mean genocide the Jews. When a 20-year-old student at Berkeley says it, they don't mean it the way Hamas means it, you absolute liars. And this is what I can't stand. Everything is so dishonest in this conversation. Well, it's so dishonest.
It's such an obvious distraction, too.
But the killing of Palestinian babies, yes.
The babies and children being massacred. They don't want to talk about the ethnic cleansing. They don't want to talk about the geopolitical potential instability and possibilities of World War III. Like, they don't want to talk about that. So let's actually invent things that college kids aren't even saying. I mean, that's the other thing is when they get up there and they're talking about, oh, they're calling to genocide the Jews. They don't even say what the people are actually saying.
Correct.
They just say, like, oh, the chant made me feel unsafe. And so it's such an obvious distraction, number one. Number two, just as if you throw racism around, you throw sexism around, if you use the word too much and use it when it's not actually applicable, then it becomes meaningless. And then when there is genuine anti-Semitism,
like Elon Musk, for example,
plenty of, yes, Elon Musk as one example, then it doesn't carry any weight. And the institutions like the ADL that are supposed to have this moral clarity and all of this weight and credibility when it comes to calling out anti-Semitism, no one's going to take what you have to say seriously. When you're going after like Thomas Massey for a Drake meme, or when you're conflating criticism of a foreign government with anti-Semitism, that's part of what to me is so utterly disgraceful and disingenuous about this entire conversation. And then the layer of hypocrisy is so enragingly brazen and obvious that it's insane. If it had been a college kid, a black college student, a trans college student who was doing these same press conferences about how they felt unsafe from a rhetoric or poster or protest or whatever, Republicans like Nikki Haley would be laughing their asses off, mocking them as snowflakes, saying, oh, you need your safe space. Like it's like they just turn on a dime with apparently zero self-awareness and have now embraced that entire ideology of words are actual violence and we must protect them and we must codify them, and berating these university presidents to be more censorious on college campuses when 3 seconds ago they were in the exact opposite position.
This is no different than a conservative on a college campus saying, I'm against affirmative action, and then having the left call a press conference to explicitly say, this is dangerous racism that puts my life in damage.
This is making us unsafe.
This is making us unsafe. Because the examples that are actually happening are from the river to the sea, which, as I just described, means many different things in different contexts. It's different when a 20-year-old American says it versus a freaking Hamas person, right? And the other thing they're angry about is intifada, when people call for an intifada. Well, intifada roughly translates to rebellion, okay? That could just mean fight back to end the occupation, fight back to end apartheid. It could mean fight back non-violently, like the Great March of Return in Gaza.
Right.
They're just pretending, no, they mean kill all the Jews.
Even in the first intifada in particular, but in the second as well, but overwhelmingly the actions that were taken were nonviolent. So, but you know what? Even if they were calling in a protest, I wouldn't support or condone this at all, but in a protest for actual violence. If it's just speech and it's not targeted directly against a student, then even that is protected First Amendment speech, which is something that a minute ago conservatives claimed to be absolutists on.
We just had Nazis protest literally outside of Disney World. And yes, we took note of it and we were like, wow, this is crazy. These people are hateful. But you know what? It's called the First Amendment. And cops were not sent in there to bust them up. Jackbooted thugs were not sent in there to bust them up and haul them away to prison. And that's an example of actual anti-Semitism, actual real bigotry, etc. But like, that's the way this country works. Instead, they're calling press conferences and whining like little bitches, and Nikki Haley is more than happy to get up there and say she compared left-wing protesters for Palestinian rights to the KKK. Piss off. Piss off.
Yeah, and the Biden White House plays into this crap. A bunch of Democrats play into this crap. They were going after Thomas Massey for that meme. Chuck Schumer going after Thomas Massey for that meme. Condemning Pramila Jayapal because she said her rape was horrific, but I guess she didn't say it.
Let's be balanced in our criticism.
She didn't say it hard enough.
Yeah, because they were mad because she said, let's be balanced in our criticism. And they were like, but Israel has never raped any Palestinians. Meanwhile, cue the news stories that are endless. I covered one the other day. 13-year-old Palestinian boy raped by an IDF IDF member. The State Department learned about it, saw it was credible, went to the Israeli government, said, hey, there's a 13-year-old who was raped. You guys need to do an investigation or do something about the guy who did it. What did Israel do in response? They went to the charity, which blew the whistle and shut it down.
And labeled them terrorists.
Labeled them terrorists. That's just one example. Talk to any of the political prisoner Palestinians. They have some horror stories too. So when Pramila Jayapal says, hey, Hamas's sexual violence, evil, wrong, terrible, horrific. But let's be balanced in our criticism here and also have concern for Palestinian human lives. And that's a scandal. Fuck off. Fuck off.
And at a time when Made in America bombs, 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs are being dropped on schools and apartment buildings and refugee camps, and children are being massacred by the thousands. And we're having a theoretical debate about what college kids didn't even say on college campus.
Somebody's feelings were hurt. Some Harvard asshole's feelings were hurt.
We're having a round of condemnations and multiple days of a news cycle about whether or not Pramila Jayapal is for rape or not. I mean, it's just the naked nature of the attempt to distract and have some crazy shiny object over here. It's such a sign of what a country in decay and decline we are, that we can't even, our elected elite officials can't even keep their eye on the ball of freaking ethnic cleansing on its way to a genocide to focus on that. No, they'd rather debate speech on college campus that didn't even actually happen.